This is a free sample of the book Riches from Bitches, Exploiting the She-Economy for Profit by Cairo Copeland. Available on Amazon, Audible, and reinventideal.com. Chapter 3. No, pet food stocks are a dumb investment. If you listen to any episodes of the Fresh and Fit podcast since 2021, you've likely heard the dumbest investment recommendation: dog food, or more specifically, Chewy. Ever since 2021, Chewy has lost nearly 80% of its value. It was well over $100 at the beginning of 2021. It only went down from there during a year when the stock market reached a new all-time high, mind you. As of October 2023, it's down to $18, more than an 80% drop. I don't think Myron and Walter are the guys you want managing your stock portfolio. I know this one might have started as a joke, but some folks are taking it seriously, especially in the Red Pill Consortium, and it's a foolish idea. Here's why. The premise is that women adore dogs, so if they're single, they'll use their furry companion as a surrogate life partner, right? Sounds like a simple theory. Do you know what I say about simple theories? They're usually wrong. Here's the question you should ask. What concrete evidence do you have to support the idea that the demand for dog food will surge? You might say single women will adopt more dogs, but married women want furry friends too. Same with women in relationships. Whether single or not, women love dogs. So an increase in single women doesn't automatically mean more dog adoptions. Further, dogs being adopted by married women and women in long-term relationships aren't starving their dogs. They feed them too. Not to mention the animal shelters they adopt these dogs from aren't starving the dogs either. They must keep the furballs fed by law. So there is absolutely nothing to suggest that there will be more demand for dogs or dog foods. I will concede that pet products might be a great idea for a side hustle business because it's incredibly easy to market them. More about that later. But the stocks of pet product companies are no surefire bet to success. The next dumb idea that many guys are all too quick to rush into is daycares. They think that investing in daycare companies will be the next big thing because these working women will need someone to raise their kids for them while they work. The report did say that these women would be childless, so it's clear that thinking this way is missing the point. Further, is there even a single publicly traded daycare company you can buy on a stock exchange? No. Another dumb idea I hear is buy the woke companies like Target and Disney because those woke brands are popular with the single gals. I have to attack this stupid idea just as harsh. The report said there will be an increase in single women, not woke tards. And while it's true that single women tend to be more liberal and leftist, that doesn't change much once they're in relationships. They'll still refuse to acknowledge reality, which may be why there are less relationships in the US, and hence the report. Further, the majority of women will always believe in bullshit like left-wing wokeness, because they live in a cyclone of misinformation supported by the sad, sorry simps that want to bone them. Really, how many ballless husbands and boyfriends in America even have the nerve to challenge their women on their foolishness? Egg freezing companies are a dumb idea too, because the technology doesn't work, and the poor results they are selling to women will lead to lawsuits. The most famous story of which comes from Manhattan Beach, California, where Bridget Adams, who appeared on the cover of Bloomberg Businessweek under the headline, "Freeze Your Eggs, Free Your Career," experienced a very cruel twist of fate in the matter. She froze them in her 30s and went on to work her career, pissing away $19,000 on the procedure at age 45. She thought she was ready to have kids, but biology refused to be outsmarted. 2 eggs failed to survive the thawing process. 3 more failed to fertilize. That left 6 embryos, and 5 of them appeared to be abnormal and unacceptable for use. The last one was implanted in her uterus as the last hope, but it later failed. Her chances of producing a genetic child of her own died with that egg. While I do not doubt many women will piss away massive amounts of money on this in America, I do not foresee it being profitable because loads of litigation will follow the failures of the eggs unfreezing. Further, the investment thesis behind this idea is far too shallow to be good. When it comes to investments, especially in stocks, your investment thesis must be deep. The deeper your thesis and supporting evidence, the better rewards you may receive. If the typical low IQ sports ball watching video game addicted spurgtard can come up with the same thesis as you after just 15 seconds of thought, your thesis is not good enough. To succeed in stocks, you need two things: a contrarian investment thesis that goes against the market consensus, and then also a contrarian investment thesis that goes against the market consensus and turns out to be right. You can't just be contrarian, because several contrarian theories turn out to be wrong. Further, you can't just be right, because buying a good company at a bad price is just as bad as being wrong, even though the company was right. The idea is to buy good assets at good prices. Sure, a stock can go from being overvalued to more overvalued, but is that something you want to bet money on? Further, every other imbecile out there trying to be the next Warren Buffett is following the trends and coming up with simpleton investment theses. They may as well open an account with Franklin Simpleton. Take these examples. Folks invested in Tesla because they knew the company was working on a hot new electric car. Making hybrids cool instead of the joke they are was groundbreaking, and it could mean big bucks for Tesla, right? Well, here's the catch. You knew they had a cool car. I knew it. Everyone and their grandma knew it. The real question is, who didn't know it? No one was left in the dark, so there was no room for growth. Or how about this one? Some investors figured that if a Republican won the presidency, defense spending would soar, and companies like Boeing would rake in the cash with more government contracts. You guessed it. We all knew that too. Thus, the whole time Trump was president, Boeing suffered some of the worst returns in its history. If your investment thesis takes you just 30 seconds to whip up, you're likely heading for a humiliation. You must aspire to be ahead of the game, willing to endure the ridicule of being wrong before being proven right. In the book Jurassic Stocks, John Michael Jones and I use Jurassic Park as an analogy to explain how to invest in stocks. Remember one of the early scenes when John Hammond is riding the Jeep with the lawyer who says, "I'll shut you down, John"? What was Hammond's response? As I recall, he had so much confidence in the product he had that he shot back to the lawyer, "In the next 24 hours, I will be accepting your apologies." You must know your investments so deeply and intimately, like Hammond knew his park, to have this kind of confidence. Except you need more knowledge than John had, because he apparently didn't know he had a disgruntled employee bent on espionage and sabotage. To come up with an investment thesis that is both contrarian and correct, you need what billionaire fund manager Howard Marks calls second-level thinking, or what I call a liberated mind. Think of the markets as the Matrix. Most of the inhabitants of it were still plugged in, thus slaves to the system. That is the typical investor in the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ. They follow the leads of others or just diversify so much to never do better than the average. But the liberated minds, those who hacked into the Matrix like Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity, were able to excel and do things that others could not. Neo could fly. Morpheus could jump from one tall building to another, and Trinity could drive or pilot any vehicle, all because they were liberated minds. Those still plugged in could not. In the same way, liberated minds can capitalize on great investment opportunities, while others are paralyzed by limits, mostly psychological. Others seemingly have successfully tricked them into believing. Like the agents in the Matrix, the gatekeepers of great wealth in the stock market are mutual fund managers, academics, financial advisors, and other believers of the efficient market hypothesis and modern portfolio theory. In the book Jurassic Stocks and The Financial Red Pill, we tear those two ideas to shreds because they are no longer true in the new world we live in. Or better yet, they are not the whole truth. Remember, in the Matrix, once Neo was liberated, He no longer was obligated to obey the rules of the matrix, rules like gravity. Modern portfolio theory and the efficient market hypothesis are rules like gravity and the inability to dodge bullets. The investors that are still plugged in can't break these rules, nor can they invest in a manner contrarian to them. But investors with a liberated mind can. These agents of this matrix, the fund managers, financial advisors, and academics, tell us we're too stupid to invest in the market on our own and need an educated and experienced manager actively managing our money, thereby making us slaves to their rules. Or they tell us that it's futile to look for winning stocks because the market is too efficient. A rule like that is only true if you believe it to be. Limited minds are superficial simpletons. Everyone can make shallow observations and judgments, so using these alone to determine which assets to buy is not doing more work than others, thus no success is likely. Your returns will be as superior as your attempts to be superior. Limited minds do not think past a very shallow investment thesis, but liberated minds think through complicated outcomes and convoluted possibilities, such as, what is the likely range of future outcomes? What outcome do I think is most likely to occur? What are the odds that I'm right? What do the majority of investors think? How is my prediction different from the majority? How does the current price of the stock fit into my view of the future and everyone else's? What role does psychology and feelings play into the price of the asset? And what happens to the price if I'm right? And what happens if the majority is right? Those are the questions unsuccessful investors fail to ask themselves. As you can see, the difference between limited and liberated minds is the massive workload between mere observations and deep, insightful research. A classic example of this is the electronic cigarette. When these things first hit the market, users reveled at how amazing they are. These things not only were healthier substitutes for real cigarettes, but were even better than real cigarettes. They tasted better, they cost less, and you could smoke them anywhere. This seemed like a great investment opportunity, a product that would replace cigarette smoking altogether. But that's limited mind thinking. A liberated mind would see this supposed opportunity and say, these could replace cigarettes, but that would put tobacco companies out of business, and these tobacco companies know that. They have billions of dollars in lobbying power and will use that to influence lawmakers to restrict sales and use of the electronic cigarettes. With a Titan for a competitor, it's not a buy. As you know, vaping and electronic alternatives to cigarettes have been the subject of far more vilification by the media in the last 10 years, more so than cigarettes. Who do you think is behind that? While cigarettes were killing 1 million people a year, the media declared war on vaping, which killed only a few thousand a year at most. With a Titan competitor like Big Tobacco, it's no longer a David and Goliath story, but a Godzilla stepping on a cockroach story. Another great example was back in 2017 when marijuana was starting to become legal in several states and many investors thought pot stocks were going to soar through the ceiling. Those were limited mind investors. You don't hear much about marijuana companies today because it never became a thing, at least not in the realm of investments. A liberated mind investor would have known that because they would have dug a little deeper and realized that a marijuana seller was a dumb business to be in because the drug was still illegal at the federal level. Being federally disapproved meant most banks wanted nothing to do with these companies because they didn't want to be seen as potentially funding illegal activity. When a business is shunned by banks, it's more devastating than just not having access to banking products like simple checking accounts and payroll processing. These companies also had trouble raising capital and getting credit. Further, they also were missing out on banks being institutional investors of their companies. So pot stocks turned out to be terrible investments, and the stupid people that bought them lost big time. You cannot do what others do and expect to outperform. You cannot do a half-assed job and expect to outperform. That's exactly what most others do. What you need to do after coming up with a contrarian thesis is the hard work of valuation. In Jurassic stocks, we use a process called discounted cash flow analysis. When I ran that analysis on all the stocks in the Morgan Stanley report, the ones that they recommend, every single one of them turned out to be overly priced, grossly overpriced. In their report, they recommended Chipotle, Starbucks, Tesla, Ulta Beauty, Louis Vuitton, Estee Lauder, Lululemon, and Nike. Now, when it comes to their valuation method, it's a bit of a mystery. Did they even bother with it? Your guess is as good as mine. My gut tells me it's more of a hunch than a hard analysis. Another lament of mine from my days as a financial advisor was how clients were so convinced their ideas would reap profits when their ideas were extremely simple. One guy told me he thought the stocks of online dating companies were good to buy because most people were single. At the time of this writing, the dating app companies like Tinder are in dire financial peril. Your investment thesis needs to go way beyond a simple, because event A is happening, I think stock B is going to do great, so I'll invest in it. If your investment thesis is a piece of cake to come up with, it's a lousy one. Why? Because everyone else has probably cooked up the same one. If everyone else knows it, there's no one left to discover it later and drive up the demand, and consequently the price. You might ask, how did these companies, the ones Morgan Stanley recommends, get so overvalued? Why are they not good investments? After all, they are good companies. Well, some of them at least. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Tesla is overvalued because it's a hyped-up piece of shit ran by a psychopath faker who belongs in jail, sharing a cell with Elizabeth Holmes and Sam Bankman-Fried. I'm probably going to piss a lot of readers off, but I don't care. I don't respect Elon Musk. One, it's because his cars aren't even good for the environment like he says. Two, it's because he's one of the biggest blue pill submissive males on earth. You've seen him crying on his interview with Neil Strauss because he couldn't find a woman to love him. Third, he criticizes Bitcoin for being an energy drain when his cars are worse for the environment than Bitcoin. Sure, Bitcoin uses a lot of electric power for the mining process, but compared to what? Dollar bills? The process of printing dollar bills, which the Federal Reserve shits out by the millions per minute, is just as bad for the environment. Better yet, there's no strip mining done to the earth by Bitcoin like there is to create the lithium-ion batteries that powers his piece of shit cars. The luxury companies like Louis Vuitton, Lululemon, and Nike are luxury companies and highly discretionary. That means people can only afford them when times are good. Are times always going to be good? Of course not. So in doing a discounted cash flow analysis of them, you need to discount them more severely. Other companies like Chipotle, Starbucks, Ulta Beauty, Estee Lauder, etc. are all great companies, but they are offered at terrible prices. These guys are selling at 30 to 40 times their earnings at the time of this writing. But I do believe these companies will be overvalued for years to come, and that's all because these companies are part of the S&P 500. If you've not heard that name before, the S&P 500, you want to get familiar with it. The S&P 500 represents the 500 largest companies in the United States. When someone is telling you that the market is up or down today, they are likely making the determination by looking at what the S&P 500 is doing. Some people even base their entire investment strategy by just investing in the S&P 500, a mutual fund or an ETF that mimics it. And that's a terrible idea too. To be included in the S&P 500 index, you need to be a large cap company. That means the sum total of all the shares of the company is worth more than $10 billion. A few companies at the top of the 500 are worth trillions, like Apple, Amazon, and Google. So people may think, gee, if they're worth that much, they must be good companies. Again, if your investment thesis takes a few seconds to formulate, it's a shitty thesis. These companies don't have $1 trillion worth of value. They just have a $1 trillion price tag. You've seen plenty of shit in your life with a price tag far greater than the item's actual value, which is why you didn't buy it. Like shoes priced at $500 that do the same thing as a pair priced at $50. Or a bag priced at $5,000 when it holds no more than a bag priced at $40. Women buy this shit thinking it's valuable, but you're probably not a woman if you're reading this book. So don't invest like one. Further, market capitalization isn't a great metric in general. Anyone can have a $1 trillion market cap company. All they need to do is create 1 trillion shares and then sell one share to a friend for $1 and voila, here's a new $1 trillion company. You might be thinking, well, isn't the investment public the one that is determining the value of these stocks by pushing them up to these prices? Yes and no. The reason these stocks are being pushed up to these ridiculous prices is because of what happened in 1974. A law passed in 74 called ERISA is what made 401ks and 403bs like we know them today. These are the retirement savings accounts offered through employers. If you have one of these through your job, you probably know the basics of how they work. You have a little portion of your paycheck deducted to go into them each pay period for you to save for your retirement in hopes of one day having the sum saved big enough to replace your paycheck. ERISA basically forced that money into the stock market. That's all your retirement account is allowed to invest in: stocks, bonds, and cash. In the old days, before ERISA, people funded their retirement by selling the farm or the family business. Nowadays, we don't live in an agricultural age, and school conditions you against entrepreneurship, so the stock market is how they save for retirement. What this means is that there is approximately $15 to $20 trillion of retirement plan money in the stock market that otherwise wouldn't be there. It was put in there by force. If 401ks disappeared, people might have bigger paychecks since their contribution is no longer being deducted from it, but you know what they'd do with that money? They'd spend it right away. Of course, I believe people should save for retirement and use their employer-sponsored retirement plan to the best of their ability, but what do people typically invest in with their 401ks? The stocks in the S&P 500. That 401k money that is only there because the government in 74 said it must be there is pushing the price of those companies up way past their intrinsic value. Intrinsic value is the correct price for a stock based on what makes a company a good investment: profits. When a company like Facebook is selling for a price that is 100 times greater than its profits, you know something is wrong. Or when a company like Tesla is selling for hundreds of dollars per share when the company itself has lost money every year, you know something is wrong. The company Workday at one point had a price 1,500 times its earnings. There's no way in hell that made any sense. These companies are only going up in price because the inflows of 401k and 403b contributions continue to push their prices up, despite the companies making no more in profits or getting any greater or coming up with any more fancy innovations or doing anything better or making the world or the marketplace a better place in general. It gets even worse. IRAs and annuity contributions are also investing in these. State and corporate pensions have allocations in them. University and charity endowments are investing in them as well. It's just like the inflation you experience as a consumer. Too many new dollar bills are being created and added to circulation, while too few new goods and services are being created to match it. Thus, the prices of the existing goods and services go up. Inflation, by the irresponsible Federal Reserve and federal government, is also pushing the prices of stocks up to ridiculous levels they do not deserve. Will this always happen? If our population was increasing and people were having 3 kids on average, yes. If every couple had 3 kids, they would have one to replace the mom, one to replace the dad, and an extra one for the benefit of the economy. That's 3 new people that will have to work and save for retirement, cramming more money into the market. But as the Morgan Stanley Sheconomy report shows, the population is not reproducing at the replacement rate, and it will continue to decline. Women aren't getting married, and they aren't having babies. What do you think happens to the market when there are less and less new participants entering it, and more people withdrawing from it to fund their retirements they've been saving for? We've separated price from value because what determines a stock's price and value in today's world isn't if the company is generating decent profits. Instead, the question became, are there enough new people contributing to 401ks that buy into it? So far, we know that the Morgan Stanley recommendations are too overvalued to be good investments, and dog food is a dumb idea. So what are some good investment ideas? Thank you for listening to this free sample of the book Riches from Bitches: Exploiting the Sheconomy for Profit by Cairo Copeland. Available on Amazon, Audible, and reinventideal.com.